Hi, my name is Nikki Graff. Just to give you a little background on myself, I am the post-secondary teacher for the Bridges program for College Station ISD. Bridges is a post-secondary program for young adults who are continuing their education to work on independent living and vocational skills. So I always say, whatever you do in your daily life, that's what we practice in Bridges. One of the big things that is really close to my heart and what we work on a lot in Bridges is safety. It's when I visit with parents before they come, students begin Bridges, that's the one thing that they tell me is that they worry about safety of their student and them being able to understand right and wrong and what to do in certain situations. So I'm just going to kind of go over a few things that I do in Bridges with our students, just to kind of teach them safety in the home and the community. Let's see. Okay, and I printed off some slides, and so mine are out of order, so if you see me shuffling, that's why. So ways to teach safety. My big thing on teaching safety, and what I learned recently, what is called is living out loud, is when you're in the situation and you're in the moment and there's an opportunity to talk about it, not just sitting down and talking about it, is at that moment. So for example, when we're riding public transportation, that is the time for us to talk about what happens if the bus just randomly stopped. Who would we contact? How would we use our cell phone? So if you ever see us riding A&M transportation, you may see us in the back kind of huddled up, having a little conversation about talking about certain situations that could possibly happen in our community. But some other things we do is using visuals. Visuals are really good in the kitchen, maybe keeping them away from the microwave if you're not wanting to, or putting signs on things that you allow them to use. Practicing is huge, and that's where I feel like the living out loud, you're in that moment and you're the opportunity to talk about it. Social stories are great. So with us, we have a good 15 to 20 minute little morning group time, and in that moment is where we will share certain situations and we'll role play and do little things to kind of put them in those, we'll even use my office and pretend like it's the house and what happens when someone knocks on the door and mom and dad aren't home. And then it's also really important for me to model that behavior. I think about crossing the street and sometimes I just want to jet across, you know, not just think just for myself, but then I have to think, oh, I have these individuals here with me who are learning from me. So I have to be sure and like set those good examples for them while they are with me. Consistent reinforcement for safe behavior. When something happens and they make a good choice, is really showing them, oh my God, that went so great. And then also if something, they maybe didn't do something safe, is saying, okay, well, that's not what happened. What bad could have happened from this? And really sharing with them on how they maybe were lucky and nothing big came from it for making a simple choice. So practicing a lot, living out loud, and then just, you know, good choice, you made a good choice, good job. And then also practicing that, you know, letting them know if like they, you know, I had a student one time that the pest control came and she let him into the house, didn't know who they were. And so mom called and said, hey, will you go over such and such with her because she let this pest control in and, you know, maybe she'll listen a little more if you talk. So I sat down with the student and we talked about like, what would have happened if this pest control was not a good person? What are some things that could have happened? And so really letting her show that this is, that could have been a very unsafe situation. She didn't know they were the pest control. She just let somebody random into her house. So really getting on her level and saying, what are some things that could have happened and how could you have handled that different? And just talking through them. And also, it's not a one-time thing, it's repetitive. So we do a lot of repetitive things in Bridges. We talk a lot about safety in the kitchen, you know, just where the knobs go and how to use the knobs. So the more, I've noticed the more we practice, the better they are. And it's so neat how we see how hands-on we are at the beginning of our school year with all the safety stuff, and now we're towards the end and they're doing worrying about a lot of the different safety things on their end without me having to remind them. All right, so 911. 911 is sometimes fun. So I think what's important is that we tell our young adults or our students, our I call mine young adults because mine are all young adults in my class. So we talk about what an emergency is. So I had a parent. Will you please talk to such and such because they called 911 last night because her knee hurt. Well, why do we call 911? What are some situations on why we use 911? And a hurt knee is not a reason to use 911. Another one would call just to conversate. So if you want to talk, who do you call? So you don't just call 911 and explaining to them what 911 is used for, so they know that it's not just someone to come hang out with you. How to dial 911. Every phone is different. So being able to use, if you have a home in your house or you have a cell phone. I know what I really like, with Apple phones, they have the medical ID, so you can plug in their health stuff and their medical ID, so in case they were somewhere and were to get hurt, firefighters, policemen, whoever can access this from their phone on a lock screen. So it's really important. I know I have an older son, and I make sure all his stuff is plugged in just in case something was to happen. Let's see, how to talk to someone. It's so important to know our address and our phone number. So really making sure that they know, so posting by the phone, if you have a phone in the house, what is your address and what is your phone number? Because even though they may remember it or they may know it, in those situations, they could get really scared. I think of myself, you get really scared and you may forget where you're at, what you're doing. So they have a script written down. Maybe it's something on their phone that they carry with them that they can refer back to and know exactly what to say when they call 911. Let's see. Any questions up to this point? Am I going too fast? Okay. Let's see. All right, the next one is, this one I really like, and I didn't learn, when I started researching and reviewing notes for tonight, I was learning about Smart 911. I think this is really neat, and this, if you go to Smart 911, actually on the website yesterday and looked at it, I thought it was really neat that you can program your phone number into it, and well, you register your number, and then you register like who the person is, who they would be calling, if they have a disability, if they have an illness. So if their number does pop up, and you do have to see if it's in, I'm pretty sure it's in our community. If it does pop up, it says who they are, if they have a medical condition, so they aren't fumbling around, and that's automatically becomes an alert. It allows citizens to provide the additional details that 911 call takers may need in order to assist them during an emergency. Anytime you make an emergency call from phone registered with your safety profile, the 911 system recognizes your phone number and automatically displays your profile on the screen of the call taker who receives your call. You can include any kind of medical for any member of your house, enabling responders. I mean, it'd be good if you had a parent that maybe had some health issues and your son or daughter is responsible for calling 911 if needed. And this includes any information on medical conditions, allergies, disabilities, and medication. So I think this is a really neat website to become familiar with if you have a student that has access to a phone.
Nikki, could we just for a second, we're going to mic you better.
Okay.
Because you can't hold the mic in front of your face because you like to.
Yeah, I use my hands.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, we're just going to use it. This is awesome.
So if y'all, I would encourage you to look at this website and register if your child has a phone and can make these calls and become familiar with it. Fire. So I know we practice safe fire drills every month in schools. So have a plan in place and practice your plan. If the smoke detectors go off, where do we meet? If they were to be cooking and to get their clothes on fire, how to put the fire out. So just make sure you really have a plan in place. I know I've had the fire, when my kids were younger, I had the fire alarms go off in my house, and they just kind of sat there because I never even thought to think about it. And my daughter's here and she laughs because they did. They just kind of sat through it and didn't think that it was an emergency and to get out, and really like setting those alarms off and practicing them within the house. So they know what they sound out like. So that's why we practice them in the school, because we want them to be prepared and to know where to go if there really was a fire in our school. So the more you practice, the more they're going to become familiar with it. Let's see. Medical. Let me see what all I wrote here. Sorry, my slides got out of order. So, who is a safe neighbor? So if you're at home alone, and who is someone that they can go to? We call it a safe person. So who is someone that they can go to in your neighborhood to get help? If they have any allergies and how to respond to those allergies. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Let me fix this. Here we go. Sorry. So strangers and people knocking at the door. I recently read an article about what to do when someone is knocking at the door, and some of the things that mentioned was having something for your child to say when they're at the door, because if someone's going to break in, they're waiting for no one to answer. So making sure that they know, like, I can't come to the door right now. And another thing is Ring doorbells are awesome, and having those installed and make it and they have access to the Ring doorbell on their phone. I know I had a Vivint alarm, and a Vivint alarm has the little screen inside the house that they could go to, and they can go and look and see who's at the door. So that's really important to have. People calling, establishing concrete rules, having a code word, teach set responses. So if someone does come to the door, they know, okay, who can I let in, who can I not let in, and then having a script. I can't come to the door right now, I'll get back to you later, or they can see who on the doorbell, who it is, having a safety word like transformers, that they know, okay, I can let them come into the house. So really just having some preset things set for them, so when someone does come to the door, they know exactly what to say. And any questions so far? We practice at school. So we get into my office, and I'll have them go into my office like they're in their house, and I'll knock, and we role play on like what to say and how. And then if someone was forceful, we talk about like, what do you do if someone's forceful and they're not leaving? And is that an appropriate time to call 911? So those are some of the things we role play within the classroom. Guns, knives, and chemicals. I think having it somewhere locked up, making sure they're put away. And bridges, we always keep our knives under the sink because they're not easily accessible to everybody. And so really having them somewhere where if you think they're a safety concern for your individual, making sure they're somewhere where they can easily get them. So having them locked up. And another thing is when they go to other people's houses, is having asking them where they keep their guns and their knives, and making sure that they're not easily accessible to your individual, so they can't get them or have them available to them. So, but I'm sure all this is stuff that y'all probably already know a little bit about, and probably already do. But it's always good to kind of take a look at it and see if there's anything in the house that you should put away or you shouldn't have out, and what's safe. And especially when it comes to cleaning supplies, and knowing to wash your hands afterwards, and what the cleaning supplies are used for, and they're not to drink them. And I had a student one time that would take her brother's water, and because she thought it was funny, and she would fill it with Dawn soap, and he would go to school and he'd take a big swig of it, not knowing his sister filled it with Dawn soap. And so really it was a lot of talking with her like on how unsafe that was, because she didn't know, like, oh, it's just funny, I'm just putting soap in it. And then I think there were times that there were other unsafe substances that were in the water. So, and it was really some serious conversations with her on how unsafe that could be, and what could have happened if her brother would have got sick. Community safety. We have, at Bridges, we have our security on campus. We partner with the sheriff's department. And the one thing he tells us is he doesn't like so he comes into our room pretty frequently. And the first few years the first time he came in, they want to play like bad guys with him and different things like that. And the one thing is he doesn't like that, because he doesn't want to be perceived that way by them, because if they did need help, he's afraid that they wouldn't be willing to go to him. So really, when it comes to the police force or anybody of our community safety, making it a positive experience so they know that they can utilize them at any time. Let's see, doctors and nurses, and then it looks here, safety, like with touching, and we're gonna get to that in a minute though. And then we're going to talk about personal information and really knowing what to know for your personal information. This is my big thing with our kids, is having a state ID. And I looked up yesterday, and I think you can be at any age to have a state ID. I think it's really important to have one and apply for it as soon as you can, because that is something that you can, it's like you having your driver's license, and if you were to get in a wreck, they know that they can pull out your driver's license, and they're going to possibly have medical stuff on there, or they're going to be able to access your home and information that they need. So I say as soon as you can, get them a state ID. Now, when you go to Texas, to the DPS center, be prepared and look it up before you go, because I brought students back 3 or 4 times before we could finally get all the paperwork in order. But when it comes to personal information, the best thing you can do is have a state ID on them at all times. And this is something when our SRD has come into our class, our security, and he has spoken with them, and he says that, he goes, you know, if they were to have some kind of behavioral incident out in the community or something, and some of our individuals who have autism, they look like you and I, and so you don't know they have a disability. So then they're up and they're yelling and they're screaming, and then all you think is just someone who's just having a rough day, but really this is someone who has a disability and they need help. And so having that state ID and being able to help them is very helpful. And I cannot push that enough on how important getting a state ID is. And so knowing your personal information, that will help too. That will have and they're so proud of it, having their state ID. That's the one thing when they get it, they want to show you their driver's license, and they want to show you their what they're proud of, and it's a part of being an adult. But everything I looked up, it looks like you could get them pretty young. And another thing is, who do you share your personal information with? Are you going to share it with just anybody? Share it with them, give them your address or your phone number, and that's what we talk about when we ride transportation. Through A&M, we ride the A&M transportation a lot, and we talk about that. We're like, if someone asked you to get off the bus, or someone wanted to know where you lived, or wanted your phone number, or wanted to use your cell phone, those are different things that we really work through and talk about, because you don't think about it. It's something so simple that comes to you and I on how to handle that. But my sweethearts at work, they want to be nice and they want to be friendly, and so they are just like, okay, yeah, I'll get off the bus with you. I'll share my information with you. I'll give you my cell phone, and just really teaching them right from wrong from that. And not everybody needs to know where you live. Not everybody needs your phone number. Not everybody needs your social media. Be friends with them on social media. So really being able to share that information with them and telling them the safety of it. That's one of the most important things is, not sharing all this information with just anybody. And like for us, we're in the community so much, so we're able to practice it a lot. Like 80% of the time I'm at Bridges, we're either on a bus, we're on a job site, we're in a store, and so when we're in these places, that's when we're able to practice it the most. And is telling them, what would you do in this situation if someone came up to you? How would you handle this? And working through that situation while you're actually there doing something. We recently brought everybody to the store, and showed them how to look for exit signs, how to get out of a store if there was a big emergency in the store. We practiced this at school, but you think stuff can happen in Target and stuff. So really looking up and looking for these exit signs and being able to know how to access it and get out of the store safely. So I know I'm getting off on a totally different thing with personal information, but just so much to think about and do with our young adults and our kids to teach them so they can be safe. Helpers, how to recognize who can help. This kind of goes back to like our policemen. And when we go to the mall or something, how to recognize like a security guard and who can you go to for help. So when we go out in the community, they go out, most of the time they go off on their own and I'm not with them. So we're wandering around and they're doing their own thing. So they're able to go and we'll give them a little little puzzle thing, and they go and they check off different things like where the exits are, or where the security guys are, and what do they look like. And so being able to show them like where do you go if you were to you were to need help. And this is practice as we're walking into stores too. So we're walking into Target and I'm like, okay, here's our rules. Don't leave Target. You never leave Target. You're with me, you're here. And who can you go to? What are the Target workers wearing if you needed help? So they're probably a safe person if you needed help right away. So what are the Target people wearing? And then 3, what does a cop look like? What does a policeman look like? Or just a security guard? What do they look like? And then we'll ask them, like, if you need help, what program are you with? And they'll tell you, I'm with the Bridges program. Who's your teacher? And they'll say, and they have my phone number if they need it in their cell phone. So those are some things we practice on almost a daily basis. So they know they go into a store, they're able to recognize who to ask for help. It's just same thing with HEB. We grocery shop every other Monday. So we're able to say, who do you go to? What does HEB wear? What's their color? Should they have a name badge on? And so, and then we tell them, like, what does it look like if someone what happens if someone comes up to you in the store and they ask you to leave with them? What do you say? And so being able to say, I can't go with you. I have to stay here with my teacher. So the more I practice it with them and the more they hear it in their head, I'm hoping that if they were ever in that situation, then I would be able to, they would be able to like get themselves out of it, or at least seek the right help for it. So, and then if you were to get lost or separated from family, we have a safe spot everywhere we go. Every place we go to, whether it's HEB, the mall, Target, we always have a safe spot. So it's usually at HEB, we're by the front of the store because we know there's probably going to be helpers there. So if they're worried, because we separate and they go grocery shop on their own. So if they were to ever separate from us and we're worried that they couldn't find one of us, that they know they can go to the entrance that we came in and one of us is going to find them. Same thing for Target and in transportation, because we have never left anybody on transportation. That has never happened. But it's a possibility. We have a class of 13 individuals. If someone was to fall asleep or not be paying attention, like we tell them, you do not get off the bus. You stay on the bus. The bus will make a complete circle. It will come back around and we will find you. And we show them who to call, how to call me, how to call, so they don't panic. And that's my biggest thing is I try to tell them, don't panic. Like if we panic, it's gonna make it worse. So here are some things we can do to keep us from panicking. Let's see, transportation. Yeah. So just really practicing in the community, bringing them out and showing them who the safe people are, pulling stuff up on the computer and showing them, and then just really working through it and practicing with them as much as you can. I think that's what I love the saying, living out loud. I just heard that recently, and because I could probably put that as Bridges' motto, because that's what we do. I mean, we live out loud by grocery shopping, but safety is one of our biggest things. And so just the more you can put them in those situations and bring them into the community and do different things, like the more they're going to catch on and they're going to be able to learn from it. And if they were to have an accident or need help, hopefully they'll be able to remember all these things that you're practicing along the way and be able to get help for it. Places, public restroom behavior, streets and parking lots. So I always tell our young adults, one person per restroom. There's no one else should have per stall. No one else should ever be with you in that public stall. So when they go in, I always have a buddy. We never send anybody without a buddy too. So when we go into just a public restroom or a public place, Target, HEB, we always have buddies. We always try to tell them if you're going to walk, more, not so much when we grocery shop, but when we're just like at Target or something, that if you're going to go somewhere, you need to have a friend. It's either a teacher or it's a student. One or the other, you have to have a buddy with you at all times. But that doesn't always, we get separated at times. And so just remember, if they are going to a restroom, they're letting somebody know that that's where they're going. That's one of the things we talk about before we enter a store at Bridges. Do not go to the restroom unless you let a teacher know. You let somebody know. And just making sure that that their parent or a friend or a buddy or a teacher is aware that they are in the restroom. And that one person is in their bathroom at a time. So sometimes we'll have it to where one person's waiting outside and one person's in the bathroom stall. So just making sure that they know that there's only one person in the restroom, and that they notify someone that they are going into a restroom and that they're not going by themselves, because then you start looking for them, or we would start looking for them and we don't know they're in the restroom, and it becomes a very nervous situation. And then a safety thing, so they know that no stranger should be going into the restroom with them. They should be going in there by themselves. So that's another thing to really work on, and we can work on that within our classroom, because we only have one restroom in our classroom. So that's one thing we practice there, is like making sure we lock the door, because we don't want anybody walking in on us. So when we go to the restroom, and there's been incidents in our classroom where they don't lock the door and we walk in, so it's a great learning experience. What should you have done? And, well, I should have locked the door. Why should you have locked the door? Well, then my whole class wouldn't have seen them open the door. And what other things that could have happened if you were in a public place, if someone you didn't know. And so just really talking to them, and though it may seem scary, and you don't want to make them nervous, but I think the more we just make it more natural, and we just say, that it's just natural to talk about things, I think they're more likely to listen to us and to, like I said, react in a positive way in case a bad situation does happen. So streets and parking lots. This is, we do a lot, we walk a lot. So since we do ride public transportation, we are all over town. And so we're located off of George Bush, right across from the golf course. I'm at College View. And so we're right across from the golf course. So you will see us, I kid you not, we will go on the corner and we will circle that little square over and over, learning how to push the button, understanding the arrows, and knowing when to walk. And also, there's 4 teachers there, 3 instructional assistants and myself, so, we're able to guide them through this. But no, just because you push that button and it says to go doesn't mean the cars are gonna stop. So, for instance, the other day I was in a group with sounds, a man's backing up, he's not paying attention, and one student's like 2 steps ahead of me, and she wasn't looking. And so I was able to pull her back and be, hey girl, you gotta look. Like, I know, we hope that they see us, but they may not. So you've got to look. So like situations like that you don't think about, but I was able to pull her back and kind of like, you're on a mission to get into sounds. You weren't paying attention to these cars around here. So really paying attention to those cars and understanding like what to look for. I get out of the car, I'm gonna look, I'm gonna know my surroundings, and that's what we want them to know. We want them to know their surroundings and know what the cars are doing and knowing how to cross streets. A lot of my students will ride public transportation. That will be their mode of transportation as they get older and stuff. And so just working with them on how to cross the street and how to get across safely and when to stop, and if there is nowhere to cross, like how to look both ways and go across. And then you know, we have the medium, so we have one bus area where we go and we cross, and then we have to wait, and then we have to cross again. And so teaching them how to do those too. But yeah, I think public transportation is the most, because you are dropped off, and just like, you know, when you ride Brazos Transit, you could be just dropped off on Texas. So really paying attention to, especially our town. We're a town that's indulged with a whole bunch of college kids. So, you know, very young drivers. So we want to make sure and be aware of them and our surroundings on the road. And we have I can't brag enough about our public transportation. I love our public transportation in College Station. So if your child is able to utilize that one day, I really encourage you to go and bring them out and teach them how to ride it, or hopefully they're a part of Bridges one day, I don't know, and we get to teach them how, because it's such a neat, and so you don't want these little things like this to scare them. You just want them to know how to do it and how to utilize it all properly, so there are no accidents. But I can't tell you enough about how much like I love our town and public transportation and everything here. So just really talking through that and practice it. I will tell you, you can go down to the transportation place, pay $45, and you can get an A&M transportation pass. It will get you on both Brazos Transit and the A&M bus. So if you ever have your child is old enough to do that, you can still do that. And it's really a fun experience. And you get to meet a lot of like really cool young adults, college young adults, who are also very helpful. So if you ever want to practice, or your child is ready for that, I would really encourage you to do it, because it's a really neat experience. Okay, personal safety, personal boundaries, say no, unhealthy and healthy touch, identify trust adults to go for questions and concerns. So my age group is coming into their adulthood. Teenage years, so we have hormones going in my classroom. I mean, not gonna lie, we have somebody's boyfriend, everybody's somebody's girlfriend, to the point where we were like, no dating in Bridges. And so we had to completely like stop that. And so this is something like we talk about a lot, because they are lovey-dovey. My whole class, you walk in, I say it's the happiest place on earth, because they want to hug you, and of course we're like that too. We love our kids, and we want to hug them and stuff. But for me, I know when my student hugs me, I know them. I know it's an innocent hug, and I know nothing. But really being able to set those boundaries with them on someone they may not know, on asking for hugs and asking how they want it to be greeted. And once they get to know each other, it will be a little different. But I know my kids. I know when my young man comes in and he gives me a big bear hug in the morning, I know it's from a good place. Whereas, you know, someone else may not. And I really teaching them to set those boundaries, because that's one thing a lot of my parents worry about. They worry about their child being accused of something when it was something extremely innocent. So as they start getting older and they start maturing and becoming an adult and looking at an adult, really teaching them like what healthy touching is. And though a hug may be innocent to them, the person who they're hugging may not know that about them. So telling them, you really need to ask for a hug, or shake their hand, and then you can ask for a hug. Or shake their hand, and as you get to know them, it can develop into a hug. So really teaching those boundaries for them, that is super, super important, and something that, you know, we talk about all the time, because I'm sure as a parent, it's a horrible thing to even think about that happening. And so you want to really like just stress that really hard. So when we go places, you know, especially when we go to places, we'll go to Project Search. It's graduation in a couple weeks, and so they'll get excited and they'll want to hug everybody. So we'll have to tell them, when we go in, we're adults here, and so we're going to shake hands. And so telling them that we're going to go in and shake hands, and preparing them before we actually walk in on what to do. Because they'll forget and they'll get happy and they'll want to hug you. So when you walk in, hey, you need to shake their hand. We're not going to hug. We're going to shake their hand. And that kind of goes into personal boundaries. Not everybody wants to be hugged. And so teaching them that too. Not everybody's there to be huggy. They just want to shake your hand. And then also teaching them that it's okay for them to say no. Like if someone wants to hug them, they're allowed to say no, and you're not hurting anyone's feelings. I had something with a young adult not too long ago, and she didn't want to do something. It had nothing to do with inappropriate touching or anything, but she didn't want to do something, but she didn't want to hurt their feelings. But it was nothing she was going to hurt their feelings over. I can't even tell you what it was. But I can remember having the conversation and saying, it's okay to say no. Like you don't have to do whatever they're asking if you're not hurting them feelings. So telling someone no is not hurting their feelings. And so when it comes to touching or personal safety or personal boundaries, really telling somebody no that you don't want to be touched is okay. There's a nice way to say no. And then also having a safe person to go to if something was to become inappropriate. I have a student, and her safe person is her sister. So she can go to her sister if something is, she feels uncomfortable with something. They're coming into dating, some of our young adults. So they're experiencing in their way boyfriends or girlfriends, and they may not be on the same page. They may not know how to express themselves. So having that safe person, a brother, a sister, an aunt, it doesn't have to be, mom and dads aren't always the best safe person, especially when it comes to stuff like this, but someone that they can trust, and then they can go to the parent if needed. But really talking to them and telling them, having that safe person in case, they didn't know how to handle something with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and how to say no, and that no is okay. And really, and it's okay to ask questions. Ask questions about what's going on and trusting that individual. So really working with them on all those boundaries and saying no, and appropriate ways for them to greet and hug, and there are ways of when they become comfortable with someone that it's okay to hug then. Okay, so any questions up till now? Okay, let's see. And then I'll backtrack too, because I think I went through some of it kind of fast. Okay, so I know cell phones are like questionable. I'm a big advocate for cell phones when they get older. That is like hands down, I'm a huge advocate. Visited with a parent the other day whose child has a cell phone basically for safety reason, because if your child's home alone, I think they need some sort of way to communicate with you, or they need to have a policeman, or they need to call the fire department. I'm a huge, huge advocate for cell phones. The great thing about cell phones now is that there's family share, and you can put, I had a parent tell me, hey, so we grocery shop. So they're like, hey, if you ever need an app downloaded, text me first because they're blocked. And so they have to approve everything before they download it onto their phone. So they were very, we try to work really hard on appropriate cell phone. That's where we have access to a ton of stuff. So a lot of our individuals don't have internet on their phone, if that's what you're unsafe about, or they're blocked from certain sites. Or they just have a phone at home that connects to their Wi-Fi where they're able to use, at least use it for emergency. I would say when we ride public transportation, I would never stick them on the bus without a phone. Like that is like number one. If there's an emergency, something was to happen on the phone, on the bus, they would need to be able to get in contact with me or somebody else, and be able to call somebody, a parent or somebody. So those are some things that I'm like a huge, huge advocate. Texas State ID, cell phone, being able to interact with law enforcement, all those different things. So I would really, if you're ever to a point where you're not sure, I think there's ways to practice using a cell phone. They even have like the prepaid phones where you only have access to so much stuff. And so just being able, even if it's just being able to call 911. So I would always say if your young adult could have a phone, I think it's a great thing to start working on when you feel they're going to be home alone or be in situations where they may need a phone. Anything else? I can talk about, okay, we do a lot of money management bridges. I'm a huge advocate for having their own, okay, I'm not going to say debit card because I don't think they need a card that's linked to a bank. But I encourage more of using a prepaid gift card, like a reloadable gift card, I meant to say. So being able to use a reloadable gift card, I worry about cash. because a lot of our individuals don't know to count how much they're getting back. Sometimes they'll offer other people money, not realizing how much they're going to offer. So when I have families starting to get ready to move over to Bridges, I ask them, I was like, we'll be more than happy to work with cash, but I would prefer working with teaching them how to swipe their card and all that, using a PIN number. I think that's great practice for them, and I think it's more of a safe thing. If it was to get stolen, there's only 35 bucks on it. If it was to get lost, there's only $35 on it. So we're not missing out on a whole bunch. That's kind of my idea when it comes to cell phones. Anything else? I feel like I went too fast.
Do you know, I have a question.
Yes,
like,
please.
With 911, if there's any way to register, like your child, not as, I guess it'd be that safe thing.
That smart 911?
So like you can give details about like, your child if he's like
Yeah, so my understanding when I researched all the smart 911 stuff, you're registered in the system. So when they receive a call from your phone number, all the information pops up, who they are, their medical disabilities, probably who lives in the household who may have some medical or disability, medical or possibly a disability too. So I would encourage, that's probably the way I would go, because I'm not sure, and maybe y'all may know more information, that when you just directly call 911 from a cell phone, I don't think your location automatically pops up. So
I always have to give them the address.
yeah, so I would say that registering the phone number through Smart 911, that seems like when you call 911 from that particular phone number, then it would pop up and it would show that who they are and what conditions they have. Yeah. Anything? Yes, ma'am?
I was going to say, go back to the debit card.
Yes.
There's one called Greenlight.
Yes.
Yeah, debit card for kids where you can set where they can spend it if they need to be limited on where they're spending it. And of course, it can only add money onto it if you have the money.
Yeah,
and do chores and stuff, and they can get paid.
Yes.
And they check off.
And I have a parent a couple of years ago that used that, and every time her child would swipe the card, she'd get an alert that their child was using the card. And so that
Greenlight?
It's only like $4 a month.
Yeah, and I think they even have a free account, maybe you can pay to upgrade it so they can invest and have a savings account and do all that.
And I think that year we got several students signed on to it, and we got they got some free accounts and stuff. So I think the more people you refer, the more stuff that we got. Yes, ma'am?
Were you gonna go over the talks about sexual abuse, how to prevent that, because it's
I would-
in there? So
I think there was additional stuff that went out that I don't think I was told to speak about. I don't know if Amy, if you wanted to speak about that, but I know that.
I would be interested in how you talk to your kids about it.
Yeah.
What you're allowed to talk about, because this is one of those things where, my son, his verbalization is limited.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of kids don't want to talk about their day. It's got to be real specific. And there's always, I know we all have that fear that when your kiddo is like,
Sure.
can they communicate that? But I know it's hard to talk about because it's so abstract.
Right.
So I didn't know if there's a certain way y'all.
I know for me, we talk about it just being in a school. So we talk about the appropriate touching and having the safe person, and in that way. So if you were, now before I taught Bridges, I taught another class that's what I worked with a whole bunch. That was a majority of it. And we did talk about it frequently because it was students who I was teaching that some things had happened. And I know for me working with those individuals, it was a little bit more open because of what they were experiencing in the house and different things. And so for me, it was just being honest with them and open and just being really direct with them on what was going on. And if something had happened, and being able to know that they could talk to me and they could tell me and I was a safe person. And then also, I'm a parent too, and so being able to, I know for me, just with my children, as an example, I'm very honest with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm very like, they know what's an appropriate place where someone can touch them, you know, who's a safe person, and my kids are getting older now. And so they, you know, understand it a little more. But when they were little, I was very honest with them on being able to tell me, like, if something was happening that was inappropriate or they felt inappropriate. And for me, as a teacher and as a parent, I think for me, it's being direct and honest. It's like not beating around the bush, you know, it's just being, you know, this is not a place where you're supposed to be touched. You know, so if someone is asking you to do something like this, it's not allowed and it's not okay. And then also I have always expressed, and it's funny because I always do this thing with my kids when they get out of the car. I do it with Bridges as we're walking into the stores. It's a rundown of every bad thing that goes on in that I could think that could happen in a certain situation. And so as my oldest was moving into athletics and stuff, I would tell him, you're never to be alone with the coach. You're never to be alone with the teacher. And it was just a whole rundown. And then I would say, if you ever felt uncomfortable, who can you talk to? And they would say, well, I can come to you. And so I'm always just reassured, and it has been such an open communication that it's just normal. And I think that's another thing, is just being able to really, really talk about it, to where if something if something horrible was to happen, that they are able to come to you and just be able to tell you what happened. And I think the more we can kind of normalize those conversations with our students or your children, the more willing they're going to be willing to listen. Because I know those aren't fun conversations to have.
If you're like, how much is he understand?
Right.
I started early with mine.
Yeah.
I called all the things, the correct things.
Yes.
Like I said, I didn't beat around the bush. I was like, this is this is that, this is no. And with him, I keep it simple. No.
Yeah.
Just put,
Yeah.
Yep,
absolutely.
Tell mommy.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, and I repeat it.
Yeah. And I have felt that that's been the best practice in everything I do and what I teach, is repetitiveness. The more I can repeat it and the more I can say it and the more, I felt like some of the stuff in here was repetitive, just in the sense of I handle it in the same way. It's an open conversation. We talk about it frequently, and the more you talk about it, it goes across the board for everything: safety, cooking, transportation, vocational training. And I felt like, I'm not the parent, but I do see them a lot, and I like to think I love them like they're my own kids. And so I like to see, the more I talk about it, and I was just telling my staff the other day, I was like, isn't it really neat on how we put in, and it's like raising kids. You put in so much work at the very beginning and doing all this repetitive things. And now at the end of the school year, I'm like, wow, look how much we've come, how far we've come, because we practice and we practice. And I didn't do it where it was annoying, where every little situation I have to do this. But you know what? We're in the car and, we're getting out, we're crossing the street. I'm like, okay, what do we do now? We look both ways. So,
And they repeat it back to you.
And they repeat it back to me.
That's a reward in itself.
Yeah.
And then you realize they get it.
They get it. Yeah, and and some of my young adults they come to me at 18, and some will stay with me for a year, 2 years, and maybe they'll move on to Project Search. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll stay with me for 3 or 4 years. But it's so neat because I feel like it just clicks, and it's not like your average teenager where it may click at 16 or 17. It may be 21, and so it may just click. And I think that's another thing. It's just I've seen it because this is my 6th or 7th year teaching Bridges, and I look at how I went in when I was my first year, and how I was like, am I getting these results? And and just learning how to teach, because I went from adaptive behavior to Bridges, and learning how to teach differently and teach different type of students, and being able to be like, okay, now I get it. They need more time. They're going to mature later. So we're not going to see the behavior change at 15 or 16. But I'm gonna tell you, at 21 or 22, you may see huge growth that for an average, teenager, you may have seen at 16, you may see at 22. I see that across the board when we talk about stuff like this, or when we cook. When the biggest thing I've seen is speech. I've seen a huge maturity with some of our, not nonverbal, but probably close to nonverbal when they came in at 18. And then at 22, they're having these 3 to 4 word sentences with me that we didn't have. And we're having conversations and different things. And it's because it's just been repetitive. We socialize a lot. So in my class, there's a no cell phone rule. Like when you're in the class, we have no cell phones. First time in my class. And so from day one, and it's hard. When you first come to Bridges, it is hard to put that cell phone away. But that's from day one, your cell phone gets put up. Because I think of Bridges like, you can go home and play on your phone. But at Bridges, you're with me, and I have you for this amount of time. We're going to tackle those social skills so hard. And so I think that has been very helpful as really putting those cell phones away, and that's all they can do is learn. And all they can do is socialize. And all they can do is talk. I'm telling you, you're more than welcome to come visit my class whenever you want. It's a party all day long. And so they come in, and it's very repetitive, and we play games, and they learn through all that. We even have bingo. It's a bingo safety game we play. And so we have different ways that we teach different things. Even when we talked a little bit about guns and knives and different things like that, but like cooking and stuff, like there's so many safety things. I have a great story of a young man who his first year in Bridges, my second year teaching, I'm in my office, I smell something. I'm like, oh my goodness, what is that? So I go out there and no one's in the kitchen, so at this point I'm kind of worried. And then I'm like, is someone cooking something? Well, this young man was like, I'm cooking an egg. Well, his egg had been on the stove for quite a while. It was like a Frisbee at that point. And so, but it's just like teaching those safety things on like, okay, so now we're like they like start. So so they all grocery shop, they buy their own stuff, and they all have menus and they cook their own food. So now they know they have to stay in the kitchen the whole time, and like teaching them like how to stay. And now that we're like 9 months into the school year, they're like, I'm not going away from the stove because I know Miss Nikki is going to get me. And so now when I see this young man who has now he's aged out, exited services, I go watch him play sports or whatever. He's like, Miss Nikki, I haven't burned down the house yet. And I'm like, woo-hoo, we learned something. And so something so small to us, so big to him. And so he cooks, he does little things at home and cooks his own eggs and stuff. But it's just been because we've practiced through everything. So when it goes back to talking about sexual abuse and having those conversations, I'm going to say you make it a conversation just like you would with safety. I think it's very important to just be able to, like you said, be able to talk to them what's inappropriate and what's not. And then, I think you're doing a great job what you're doing, just having those conversations and making it a daily part of your everyday life. Because that's how they're going to remember and they're going to know. And then they're going to know, okay, moms, and I always tell them, we're not going to be mad at you for telling me. And that's very important too. Is, I want to know, I want to help. I'm here to help. So, any more questions? I hope we were a little helpful. I mean, I'm not a big presenter, so I do have a passion for this, and I'm not so much just safety, but individuals with disabilities, and I love teaching I have 13, I'll have 16 next year, young adults in my class, so it's been a pleasure getting to know all our families and services that we have available in the community for our individuals. So please reach out to me if I can ever help with anything. I'm happy to answer questions or help or whatever I can be helpful with. So, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
So I'm just gonna share a little bit of my own personal experiences of having a 17-year-old who's autistic and teaching all of this. And it really is starting young, right? Not waiting until they're 17 to try to do these things. I mean, get them while they're young, start that young. So when my son was in 5th grade, he was getting off the bus And he would stay home alone for 30 minutes until I got home. And so we practiced that. We practiced how do you unlock the door. It was in his IEP in the transportation section. The bus driver needs to wait until he's in the house before they leave. So we practiced, how are you safe at home? We practiced, that was a perfect opportunity for us to practice fire safety. Who do you call? Text mom the moment you get in the house, all of those things. So I know this information is like overwhelming because it's like safety everywhere. But we also have to think, right, that our kids have the right to have the dignity of risk like any child. So that doesn't mean that, my son learned how to ride a bike when he was 14. He really didn't ever care to learn how to ride a bike before that. So when he decided he wanted to learn to ride how to bike, he was adult size. So it took him like 30 minutes to figure out how to ride a bike. And I was like, yay, you learned how to ride a bike. And I thought, okay, we're gonna ride around the neighborhood. No, he wanted to ride a Texas A&M because he wants to go catch some Pokemon. And I said, oh, wow, okay. And then I thought, all right, riding a bike is a form of transportation. If he's not able to drive a car when he's an adult, he can ride a bike and go somewhere. So then we were like, okay, we're gonna practice around the neighborhood. Mom's gonna be following you in the car. We learned all about hand signals and all of that. We followed him to Texas A&M. We came up with a little route that he could go where he wasn't going on major roads or anything like that. And he did it. He rode to Texas A&M, and then, as they experience new things, then things happen that you go, oh, well, crap, I didn't teach him about that. So then his chain came off. I didn't teach him how to fix his chain, but somebody else was there. They helped him put it back on. He came home and he was like, oh, the chain fell off, but, this nice person helped me. And so next time, because he doesn't like to get his hands dirty. So then he made a kit so that he would have with him so that if the chain came off again, he would have gloves and he would be able to fix it on his own. So he got that taken care of. Well, then he's riding his bike everywhere and he has a little accident. Not a big one, but a little one. He does get hit by a car. And he gets up, he comes home, he's like, hey mom, just so you know, I did get in an accident. This car was coming out of a parking lot, they didn't see me, and so I hit the side of the car. So the car wasn't even really moving. And then I was freaking out, I was like, oh my gosh, he got hit by a car. This is it, I'm not gonna be able to let him ride a bike. And then I thought, Amy, you were in college, you got in a bike accident, and did anybody ever tell you you can't ride a bike anymore? No. So that was another learning opportunity. Okay, so our kids have the dignity of risk. That's how we learn. I don't want us to, safety is so important, but when we're so hyper-focused on safety and we think my kid has to know how to do everything perfectly in this artificial space before they can really try it in the real world, right? Then we're robbing them of the experience that typically developing kids have. So just think to yourself, maybe not if you're in the 70s, 80s kids where, my parents had no clue where I was, I was gone. Maybe not that bad, but starting young and letting them do those things. My son had his first phone when he was in 6th grade. And that was on purpose because I work with young adults at Texas A&M, and I realized that when they got their first phone at 18, they were so excited that they finally had a phone that they were getting into trouble with it. They always had it out because they never had one before. They were making, they were texting people and they didn't know how to text appropriately. So if they really liked a girl, maybe they said something that they shouldn't have. So although having a phone can be a scary thing, it brings you a lot of independence, right? Being able to say, hey Ty, I'm gonna go to HEB, put your stuff in the app. What do you need, right? That's shopping right there. That's a skill. Learning how to be able to do that on there. Learning, okay, maybe if he, texts a young lady when he's younger and it wasn't something maybe he should have said or it came across the wrong way, he's younger. It's totally different than had he done that when he was an adult, when there's different consequences, right? So teaching them these things when they're young, when the consequences are not as big as they are when they're an adult. Personally for me, that's the way that I see it. And there's so many things that I just don't know that I haven't taught him, because I think, well, nobody ever taught me that. I didn't have to teach his brother that, but he didn't instinctively know that. So when we were shopping at JCPenney and he was trying something on, he went to the ladies' area to go try clothes on. And then I went to go try clothes on, and I heard him talking to himself, and I was like, wait, I said, no, this is where the women try on their clothes. You have to go to the men's section. And he was like, nobody told me that. And I was like, I know, I didn't realize it. I was like, that's something that I didn't know, So depending on your child's disability, they don't know what they don't know. So, just like she said, living out loud. You're going to the mall. He goes to the mall on his own. He, at 16, I hired a PATH student to help him learn how to ride the transportation. So he's 17, he's going to be a senior next year. He knows how to ride Brazos Transit all on his own. He knows how to Uber all on his own. He knows how to use his debit card. He knows how to cook some things. He, oftentimes really, really surprises me. Sometimes I think this is going to take a while for him to learn, and then he picks it up really quick. And then other things, like he's learning how to drive right now, and that brings a lot of anxiety, because it's difficult for him to control other people. He thrives on controlling his environment. So understanding that, we're going to start this, and, if you don't want to drive, you get your license and you don't want to drive, that's fine. But it gives you more opportunities, better job, prospects if you have a driver's license. But thinking, just that, ask yourself, if you have a typically developing child, would I put this restriction on them, right? And if you're thinking no, then, maybe rethink what you're trying to teach them. So when we're talking about sexual abuse, for me, I'm Puerto Rican. That means you gotta kiss every single family member when you walk in the room, right? That is to be expected, even if it's the tia that they have no idea who it is, but you kiss them because that's our custom and that's how you show love. For my son, that was totally different. So for him, I had to say, you don't have to kiss everybody, right? You have the choice to say no. And I even ask him if I can hug him. I don't hug him without his permission, because I want to show that consent. And even little things like tickling, right? I hate being tickled. Absolutely hate it, right? But even that shows consent, And sometimes I don't know, just randomly, I hate being tickled, but randomly I want to tickle my kids. And then, I'll accidentally do it. And he'll look at me and say, you didn't ask me if you could tickle me. I said, I'm sorry, you're right. So thinking about that, teaching your kids consent from the very beginning. And even though it may seem weird, asking your child if you can hug them, that is how you teach consent. And when they say no, honor that, right? That's them using their voice to say no. Because if you teach them consent and then you ask, can I have a hug? And they say no, and you hug them anyway, then you've just taught them that their no means nothing. So it's important that we think about all those things. Just pick a specific area. If your kid really likes cooking, then pick cooking to be the area that you're going to focus on for a little bit. You don't have to like try to do it all at once because that's so overwhelming. But at the same time, you know, let them make mistakes. That's how we learn. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so then we have extra time, and if I can do this correctly, if anybody here knows Mentimeter, I'm gonna do a little thing here to get y'all's feedback on what you would like to see next year. I know y'all thought y'all were getting out early, but you're not. I got you for a little bit longer. Okay. So, I have to go back to this. Okay. So if you will, you'll use your phones and scan that. And this is going to be interactive, so we can see what y'all type in. Okay, so we're going to get started. So on Mentimeter,
Did everybody get it? Everybody get on?
if you want to. Okay. Now I got to find it. Did I call it? Where the heck is it? All right.
Was everybody able to get in? Or you wait?
Did it show? I just did it. Created. That's so weird. Where did it go? Let me try. I'm gonna try it one more time. I know I saved it.
Yeah, the self-service isn't super great in here for some people. Amy says it's taking a minute.
Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay. So you can also go to menti.com, menti.com, for those of y'all online, and enter the code 36854999. That is 4999. And go ahead and tell me, what topics would you like to see us cover next year, 2023 to 2024? So we have 8 sessions. Let us know what you want to see. Okay, so we have anger management, interaction with law enforcement, law compliance versus knowing their rights. That's a great topic. Thank you. Future financial planning guardianship. Okay, we did just cover this a couple of months ago, and there are probably handouts on the table for it. And it was recorded, so you can go on the CDD Facebook page and find that video. It was Melissa Ben from Ben Law, so she just spoke about that. Getting ready to drive. That's a good one. We actually were thinking about doing that this year, so that is a really good one. What else do we got? This is your opportunity. Tell us what you want. How to deal with a limited verbal autistic child. Meltdown issues, communicate with an autistic child. Good. So while we're waiting to see if anybody else wants to put some more information in there, what really helped me when it came to meltdowns is learning the stages of a meltdown and learning when I talk and when I'm quiet, and learning to keep myself calm, because I would let my emotions get elevated as his emotions were getting elevated, and that did not help the situation. So I had to work on myself in order to be able to work with him. And now, after several years of practicing this, and him being able to say, I need time to myself. And, I can say, okay, Mom's starting to get upset. She needs a little break. She's going to go to her room and we can talk later. And he had, recently I don't remember what it was, but he argued with, I remember now. I had canceled a doctor's appointment. He was going to go on his own, and I had canceled it because I was going to be there, and I didn't tell him. And I forgot that I had canceled it. So he got there, he walked to the doctor's office, and they said, you don't have an appointment today, Ty. And he was like, oh, okay. He wasn't upset with them, but he was upset with me because I didn't ask him if he wanted to cancel it. I made an assumption. So then he texted me, and I said, I'm so sorry. And he was really upset. And then I said, can we talk about it when I get home? And he said, no, I need time to calm down. I'll let you know when we can talk about it. So that's huge for him to be able to, for us to go from 20, 25-minute meltdowns when he was younger to rarely having a meltdown, and him understanding what he feels when he's about to have a meltdown and know how to cope. And at school, being able to say, I need time to draw. I'm getting, really anxious. Drawing is one of the things that brings him comfort. So saying, I need time to draw, and his teachers understanding that that's a coping mechanism and not that he's trying to get out of work, and saying, okay, go draw. Or I need to go in the hallway for a little bit and calm down, and them saying, okay, you go do that, right? So, Google the stages of a meltdown and Google the anxiety curve. Those two things will really help. Okay, well, we got how to avoid being manipulated. That's a really good one too. And we've never covered that one. And again, one of those things where as my son has, access to going anywhere he wants. He can walk up to 10 miles a day when he's trying to catch Pokemon. And he has his own banking account, his own checking account, his own savings account, full access to his money. He got scammed by someone, gave him a sad story, and he gave them money. He had birthday money in his wallet. He gave them all the money he had because he's a kind, loving person. And then when he got home, he was really proud of himself for helping somebody. And so we had to have a conversation about, was that person really being honest with us? Was that a safe choice? What could we do differently next time? But at the same time, I also said, you know what? Mom's gotten scammed too. Right? I've had people come knock on my door, that little thing of, I gotta get to Houston for a doctor's appointment and I don't have money for gasoline, do you have a couple of dollars that would, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you gotta take your child to the doctor, of course, here's $10, So everybody gets scammed. It wasn't because he's autistic. He just has a lovely, kind heart and he wanted to help somebody, and that was a learning opportunity. So thank you so much for whoever suggested that one, because that's a really good one. We've never covered that. Okay, and inviting police officers, firefighters to meet with the kids. We have done that in the past. So I think that's a good one. I have been wanting to have like a community event where we do those things. We had one a long time ago, but I'm trying to use my connections with BPD to create some kind of event where kids can have a positive experience with police officers and firemen. So that's going to be on my to-do list to see if I can set something up for y'all. But okay, it's 7:30. Go get your kids. And thank you so much for being here. Please make sure you fill out the satisfaction surveys. Texas A&M really loves their data, and we love to hear what you learned. Thank you so much, and y'all have a wonderful summer.
The English additional resources, I failed and did not copy enough of them, but they are on the website if you want to see them. That's what she was talking about. She said, it's in here about sexual abuse. Those were the additional resources for you guys. So if you picked up English handouts and you didn't get the second one, it's on the website.
Yeah. And if you grab the notes, and if you just scan it, it'll take you right to the website. All right, thank y'all so much. Y'all have a wonderful evening. And thank you so much to Adney in the back for translating. He's the best.
Just stop this live.